Hello, my name is Professor Rakshit. This module is in the Organization of Security in Europe. The organization deals with security in Europe. Its membership includes both North American and Central Asian countries. In fact, as evident from this module, the OSCE has had little work to do in Western continental Europe in the recent past. 56 countries are member of the OSCE. This module will introduce readers to the history of the OSCE, which had its beginning in the Helsinki Final Act of 1975 and will chart its transformation from an ad hoc conference to the present organizational forum. The module will also explain the institutional structure of the OSCE, the functions of its three executive arms, the Office of Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, the High Commissioner on National Minorities, and the representatives on freedoms of the media. Learning outcomes. On completing this module, the reader is expected to understand the evolution of the OSCE from a Cold War era conference to a regional security organization, the changed nature of the OSCE functions and the nature of its mandate, the structure and functions of three of its important executive organs. Now, the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe, the predecessor of the OSCE, the Conference on Security and Cooperation in Europe (CSCE), opened at Helsinki on 3rd July 1973, continued at Geneva and concluded on 1st August 1975. The CSCE was the final act of 1975. It was signed by 35 states, including the United States of America and the Soviet Republic. Set in the context of the Cold War era, the CSE was meant to open a channel of dialogue between the West and the Eastern Communist bloc. It was basically meant to diffuse tension and maintain peace and security in Europe. Its outcome. The Final Act was not a treaty, not at least in the ordinary sense of a binding legal instrument. It was, however, an expression of some common political will in the form of commitments to 10 principles of sovereign equality, refraining from the threat of use of force, inviolability of frontiers, territorial integrity of states, peaceful settlement of disputes, non-intervention in international affairs, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, equal rights and self-determination of peoples, cooperation among states, and fulfillment in good faith of obligations and international law. The principles guiding the CSE was security through cooperation and dialogue. And the Final Act reflects a spirit of compromise between the Cold War factions to the extent that incorporates both the human rights based concerns of the West and commitment to territorial integrity dear to the Soviet. The Final Act envisaged continuous cooperation between the participating states through confidence building measures in military matters and disarmament, cooperation in economics, sciences, technology and environment, and cooperation in humanitarian and other fields. Lastly, with a view to implementing the commitments made in the CSCE, the Final Act contemplated following up conferences and other unilateral, bilateral and multilateral measures. While there were follow-up conferences in the 15 years after the Final Act, the idea of promoting security through dialogue gained only marginal traction, as growing Cold War animosity only served to deepen the divide between the West and the Soviet. B. Forming of an organization, intermediate steps. With the end of the Cold War and a newfound enthusiasm in Europe for democracy, peace and unity, the heads of the CSC member states met in Paris between 19 and 21 November 1990, concluding the Paris Charter for a New Europe. Aside from reiterating the commitment to the core values of the Helsinki Final Act, particularly to the humanitarian dimension, the Charter took the first steps towards turning the CSCE into an institution, establishing a secretariat in Vienna, a council consisting of foreign ministers of the member state, a conflict prevention center in Vienna to assist the council, an office for free elections in Warsaw. Latter, the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. Functionally, the CSCE remained a forum for cooperation through dialogue, and its new specialized centers were tasked with the job of collecting information, acting as a contact point for member states, and developing mechanisms to achieve the ends laid out in the Paris Charter. At the CSCE Heads of State meeting at Helsinki during July 1992, further institutional changes to the CSCE were agreed upon. These changes were detailed in the document titled Challenge of Change, which shows the strengthening of the institutional structure of CSCE was found necessary in order for the CEC to play an important role as Europe reaffirmed its commitment to surge ahead on the basis of certain liberal values that had been declared triumphant at the end of the Cold War. In order to meet challenges that the changing times in Europe put forward, particularly a transition to democracy in several states, the CSCE was equipped with strengthened institutions and more formal structures. The Helsinki document of 1992 in particular relevant for establishing the office of the chairman, the Troika, a team of 3 comprising the chairman in office, the immediately preceding chairman, then to be successor, and as well as the High Commissioner of National Minorities. In these years, the CSCE mandate also witnessed incremental changes to greater action in the field. For example, the Office of the High Commissioner on National Minorities was entrusted with the mandate of diagnosing early warning signals in countries with national minority tensions. Not only that, recommending and coordinating early action. In these matters, changes in the institutional structure of the CSCE continued to the 1990s. At the Budapest Summit of the Heads of State in December 1994, member states expressed a commitment to give a new political impetus to the CSCE, thus enabling it to play a cardinal role in meeting the challenges of the 21st century. At this summit, the CSCE was renamed the OSCE as if to underscore the transformation of the institutional capabilities and strengthening of its mandate, to act as a primary instrument for early warning, conflict prevention, and crisis management in Europe. Now, what is the structure and mandate of the OSCE? While the largest amount of OSCE resources are dedicated to on-field missions, representing the change from CSCE to OSCE, the keywords describe OSCE functioning remaining till date: cooperation, capacity building, monitoring, assistance, reflecting in many ways the ethos of its past. Nonetheless, with the OSCE having established missions in several theatres of conflict in Europe and Central Asia, it is safe to say that the OSCE has been playing a key role in furthering the mandate of establishing peace and security by fostering, among other things, respect for human rights. At different places, OSCE missions perform different functions that vary from merely facilitating dialogue and negotiation to more full-blooded exercises like training, capacity building, and the like. We shall review some of the work done by the OSCE missions in the following section. Institutionally, the OSCE can be broadly divided into 1. Decision-making bodies, 2. Executive structures. The decision-making bodies, including the summit, the meetings of head of state, the ministerial council, the meeting of foreign ministers, the permanent council, the forum for security, cooperation, the chairman, the troika, innovatively a parliamentary assembly composed of lawmakers from member states, gives parliamentary input and facilitating cooperation on legislative action. Executive structure aside from Secretariat, including the Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, Warsaw, ODIHR, the High Commissioner on National Minorities, Hague, and the representative on Freedom of Media, Vienna. While these three executive organs have separate mandates that they seek to implement in all OSCE member states, the bulk of OSCE work is done through concrete projects, individual host states through their own field missions. In the following section, we will take a closer look at the mandate of the executive organs alongside the working of the OSCE missions. D. Discharging the OSCE mandate is the ODIHR. The ODIHR is responsible for discharging the human dimension of the OSCE mandate. Earlier, the Office for Free Elections, the ODIHR, still primarily engages in efforts to ensure free elections through election monitoring. The ODIHR is also responsible for dispatching most of the OSCE on field missions and information sharing and assistance to local government authorities. In 2014, the ODIHR led the mission to Ukraine to assess the human rights situation there and to observe the presidential elections. The ODIHR had also played a key role in reforming Ukraine's electoral laws that ensured compliance with international domestic standards. The mission in Ukraine, one of the largest in OSCE history, is representative of the work done by the ODIHR, ensuring the elections comply with OSCE commitments, international obligations, and standards for democratic elections and relevant national laws. Alongside its contribution in the electoral process of member states, the ODIHR plays a key role in promoting observance of human rights, tolerance and non-discrimination, inclusiveness in political processes, particularly of the youth and women, and democratization through long-term trial monitoring as in Georgia, and offering legislative assembly to member states. Then you have the High Commissioner on National Minorities. The High Commissioner on National Minorities is the executive organ with the specific mandate of diagnosing and diffusing ethnic tensions in OSCE member states. Like the ODIHR, it discharges the functions of achieving security through the human dimension, only that its role is in a far narrower context. The chief function of the office is to detect ethnic tensions and threats to rights of minorities in countries and seek an early resolution of any conflict arising therefrom. The office discharges functions primarily by examining conditions of minority populations and advising states on national legislations and policies in order to protect harmony between ethnic communities. The office has been particularly influential in promoting minority protection through constitutional provisions in member states. Recently, the High Commissioner has focused on education as a key driver for ethnic tolerance in multi-ethnic societies. The office has noted the promise of education as a tool for conflict prevention, particularly by encouraging bilingual and multilingual education in member states. Simultaneously, the High Commissioner has encouraged the teaching of national languages to ethnic minorities in order to enable them to participate more fully in public life while retaining their distinctive linguistic identity. The office has noted the success of bilingual education in fostering ethnic harmony in Serbia, where the High Commissioner has been actively involved in a bilingual state-funded institute for higher education. The Bujanovac Department of Economics at the Novi Sad University in southern Serbia, like the ODIHR, the High Commissioner was actively involved in the OSCE mission in Ukraine during 2014. Then there is representative on freedom of media. The OSCE representative on freedom of media is charged with ensuring that the press media in OSCE member states remains a free and robust pillar of democracy. Like several other international institutions, OSCE reflects the common consensus that a free media is central to ensuring a human freedom and thus to a robust democracy. Like other avenues of OSCE's functioning, the underlying principles with this organ is that peace and security is both achievable and stable areas where governments do not curb the freedom of dissemination of information through media channels. The representative take up the cause of journalists with the governments in member states, particularly with a view to fostering environments where journalists can perform their function without fear, where they are secure from threats of violence and harassment. Then you have the representative on freedom of media discharges a larger portion of its mandate by observing developments with respect to media in member states, detecting and flagging, like other organs of the OSCE, early warning signals of threat to media freedom. Simultaneously, the representative engages in the constructive work of assisting member states achieve compliance with their obligations under various international law and OSCE standards with respect to free expression, in an attempt to ensure that the freedom of media remains meaningful in a contemporary setting. The Office of the Representative has, in recent times, focused its efforts on ensuring that member states protect a free internet. While being committed to the idea that a free media is a sine qua non for a robust democracy, the representative recognizes the importance of regulation in order to rein in hate speech, a problem now made particularly pernicious to the free internet-based media. The representative has recognized that the lack of regulation in this sphere is at once the strength and the pitfall of this form of dissemination. Then, however, like any other body, pitfalls and criticism always there. There are two broad forms of criticism can be levied at the functioning of the OSCE. The first is instrumental and the second political. From an instrumental perspective, it is important that the legal framework of the OSCE functioning lacks clarity, particularly with respect to the status of the organization. It is neither a regional cooperation organization in the sense of the erstwhile European community or other less integrated ones, nor a security organization like the Security Council. Its role in member states continues to remain undefined, and each mission is instituted in an ad hoc manner with a varied mandate and power. Most notably, it appears that any success of OSCE missions depends on the hospitability of host states. Thus, while the OSCE appears of a supranational entity, it lacks the usual potential associated with other treaty-based alliances. Indeed, the OSCE cannot be traced to any foundational treaty or document. Given the history of the OSCE and the gradual transformation from a forum of dialogue to one with a seemingly executive mandate, the absence of a clear watershed moment that clarifies its status as a matter of law continues to limit its efficiency. The CSCE was constituted as a platform for dialogue between powers that had ideological differences over the nature of the world order. The broadly Western ideal of a liberal democracy was the visible opposite of communism. However, the end of Cold War pronounced a clear victory for one of these two views. And the OSCE is an organization conceived in the immediate aftermath of that victory with a view to sealing the ideological triumph. Naturally, the OSCE has been criticized for being complicit, despite being a regional organization, in the project of the West with a visible ideological bent. It is clearly evident that most of the OSCE missions and efforts have been directed at East European and Central Asian countries which were either a part of the former USSR or under its influence. Inevitably, the OSCE has been accused of having an unbalanced geographical bent by acting as a conduit for imposition of central, broadly Euro-Atlantic values on its members from the East. As an institution, however, the OSCE has refuted such charges, particularly in view of its election monitoring activities in several Western European countries, as in the United States and Canada. To summarize, the OSCE is a regional security organization with 56 members, including all European countries and some Central Asian and North American states. The underlying focus of the organization is to foster peace and harmony in Europe by working with national governments on diverse matters, including political, military, and human rights issues. A significant portion of OSCE's work is dedicated to its human dimension, motivated by the belief that regional security can be ensured by paying close attention to securing human rights. Within the human dimension, the OSCE is particularly influential in detecting warning signals, sharing information, and assisting member states develop appropriate laws and policies with respect to democratic commitments to elections, minority rights, and various other freedoms. Three important executive organs of the OSCE, the ODIHR, and the High Commission of National Minorities and the Representative on the Freedom of Media play key roles in discharging the humanitarian component of the OSCE mandate. However, it must be borne in mind that the OSCE continues to face challenges owing to some ambiguity with respect to its legal status and the nature of its mandate. This has to do significantly with the fact that the OSCE is an organization that succeeded an ad hoc conference known as the CSCE, while during the Cold War era was a platform for dialogue between opposite blocs. Then there are certain self-assessment questions. Is the OSCE an international organization like the United Nations? Yes, it is a regional organization dealing with security. No, although it is a regional organization, it does not have a similar mandate. Yes, because it has military powers. No, because neither does it have a similar mandate as the United Nations, nor a similar organizational structure and coercive reach. What is the OSCE the successor of? A. The Conference for Security and Cooperation in Europe. B. The European Economic Community. And C. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And D. A different Cold War era coalition of Western powers. Is the membership of the OSCE limited to European countries? A. Yes, because it deals with European security. B. No, because it succeeds a Cold War era arrangement and thus the US is a member. C. No, it includes US and Canada. D. No, it includes North American and some Central Asian countries. Why is the OSCE concerned with securing human rights in member states? A. Because other European institutions dealing with human rights don't function well, because human rights are generally a matter of concern in Europe. And C. Because it is a subsidiary of the United Nations. D. Because ensuring human rights is a fundamental approach to ensuring security. What is the bulk done by the ODIHR? Election monitoring and promotion of democratic values. B. Litigation on behalf of disenfranchised people. C. Military interventions against dictatorial regimes. D. Acts as a court of appeal for human rights violation. How does the High Commissioner on National Minorities function? A. By offering advice to refugees. B. By acting as a processing center for refugee applications. C. By detecting early warning signals of ethnic tension and suggesting measures for reform. Thank you.